All right. Well, welcome to the second video in this series that I am making on how to use points and miles. And I realized in my first video, I never really introduced the premise of what I was trying to accomplish here. So I just wanted to go over that briefly before we begin. My name is Danny. I am a CPA, if you couldn't tell. Points and miles with a CPA is what we're going to call this. And I get asked all the time, like what I like to do for fun, and I like to travel. But more than that, I actually really enjoy the kind of the hunt for finding good deals. Wheeling and dealing, as you might say. And points and miles fits really well into that enjoyment, I guess you could say. So, as much fun as the trip that you take is, I actually really like just finding it first of all, and knowing that I got a good deal. So this is absolutely part of the journey, part of the fun, part of the adventure, and this is why I'm doing it, to show you how to do exactly that. And just as an example for, how am I qualified to do this, or am I qualified? Qualified is funny. I mean, there's no real qualification, but I do have experience doing it. I've been doing it for a few years now. I've taken trips on in business class, Delta One. We flew Delta One out of our home airport in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah. We flew that to Europe, my wife and I, a few years ago, and then we did the exact same thing something like 6 months later. I'd have to go back and remember exactly when, but something like that. That sounds right. No, it was a year later, not 6 months. It was a year later. And we've also flown first class to Hawaii, again, out of our home airport, first class to Hawaii and back. And we've been able to do all of that, and, not to mention domestic short haul flights, maybe to California and some other places, Seattle. We've been able to do all that with points and miles. We've spent very little out of pocket cash wise because of being able to find good deals and frankly, having lots of points and options, flexibility. There's kind of a few things that you need to also keep in mind with points and miles. You have to be flexible somewhere. If you are rigid in the number of points you have, the type of points you have, because not all points are created equal, right? The dates that you must be there or come back by. If you're rigid on all of those things, you're gonna have a really bad time trying to use your points to good value. You might be able to find something, but it might cost you all of your points to book one way for one passenger. But if you have, say, you have Bilt points, you have Chase points, you have American Express points, City points, Capital One miles. If you have all of those currencies, then maybe you still can be rigid on the dates of travel, the destination of travel, the airport you depart from. You can be rigid on all those things because you have lots of options in your points and in your miles. So it's important to be flexible in at least one of those areas: where you're going, where you're flying from, right? The points or miles that you have, the type of currency, the number of points and miles is obviously a factor, and then also the date, the date that you have to be there by, or come home by. Hopefully I didn't already say that. So let's get into it. This video, we are going to talk about how to go from Seattle to Europe. I'm trying to use a major airport for this one. Also, I wanted to stay West Coast. West Coast to Europe is historically, it's just more difficult than, say, JFK. If I said JFK right here, we'd be able to find any number of flights, and frankly, it's kind of annoying. As a Salt Lake City home airport, or as with Salt Lake City as my home airport, it is far more difficult to get a good redemption, at any time of year over to Europe, specifically to Europe. Now, if you want to go west, if you want to go to Asia, different story. West Coast is the main departing area of the U.S. to get to Asia relatively easily with points and miles. East Coast is difficult. So if you want to go to Europe, East Coast is easier, West Coast is harder, which is exactly why we are doing Seattle. So here's how I would start. I'm going to go to flight connections because Seattle is not my home airport, so I don't know exactly where all the nonstop flights are from Seattle to Europe. So flightconnections.com is a great resource. It'll basically show you, and there's lots of ads on these websites. I don't pay for any of these services, which just makes me kind of a leech, but I pay for it in the sense that I have to deal with the ads. Which is fine by me in most situations. Sometimes it can be quite frustrating. But as you can see, it shows here on the left side, Seattle to Copenhagen. So I'm just clicking on different destinations. These are all nonstop flights. You can go to Dublin on Aer Lingus. So Aer Lingus, I know, is a partner with Alaska Airlines. Oh, and something that I didn't mention, my apologies. Seattle to Europe, we're going to try and go in February. So it is January 2026 at time of recording. We're going to look for something next month. I want to see if there's something next month and where we could use 60,000 Bilt points. And I chose 60,000 Bilt points. There was a announcement that just came out today for Bilt 2.0, and I'll save you the buzz around it. Go watch a YouTube video if you're really interested in the details. But there is one card where it would give you a sign-up bonus of 50,000 points. To get it, you have to spend 4,000 while earning 2 points per dollar, two Bilt points for every dollar spent. So once you meet that spending threshold and earn the welcome bonus, you will have 50,000 plus the points you earned on the spend, which is 8,000 points. So at a minimum, you'll have 58,000. Let's just round it up and say 60. You want to get 2 people to Europe flying in February with 60,000 Bilt points. So that was kind of the rationale for this. So, like I said, Aer Lingus to Dublin is a partner with Alaska. Bilt points transfer to Alaska Airlines, so that's something we can look for. Seattle to Barcelona on Delta, so that's something that we could do, say, with Virgin Atlantic or with Air France. This is Edelweiss Air, no idea. It's probably a Starlines carrier, so that would be like a United or Air Canada partner. Condor, that's another Alaska Airlines partner. Istanbul, Turkish. I believe Bilt transfers to Turkish. Delta, so that's another one we can check. Paris, okay. And then London. Yeah, it's typical British Airways. Okay. So from here, I'm going to go to this resource, seats.aero. This one is great. So Bilt partners with Alaska, Air Canada Aeroplan, Air France. You can transfer probably to Emirates, but it's typically garbage to transfer there. Finnair, they use the Avios program, so you can transfer there. So I'm going to start with Alaska. I feel like we're going to have the best luck with Alaska. So we just got to wait for all this to load. This is a website that basically will, so Europe, North America to Europe. Let's go down here. Not that one. Say Seattle's the departing airport. So this website will, you tell which program you have miles in, let's say. Oh, look, I must be dumb. It says Bilt on these ones that I was mentioning. So yeah, that makes it really easy. Anyway, Alaska is the only, or I should say Bilt is the only transferable currency that partners with Alaska that you can transfer to Alaska. So that's why Alaska might be a good one. Not to mention the fact that they often have pretty good rates. So here's a flight for tomorrow at time of recording. So that's obviously not going to work, but you can see that it is 35,000 Alaska miles flying American Airlines on this flight, but that's got to stop. The direct flight is going to be on Condor. So that's Condor Airlines, 35,000 Alaska miles, Alaska Atmos rewards as they've recently been updated. Let's change the date here. We'll just go from there. So sometime in February, you can go to Keflavik, $138. So that's flying Alaska itself, it looks like. No, that's got to be Iceland. There, that's the Alaska one. But that is, I believe, Iceland Air. Well, I would imagine it's flying to Iceland. So Dublin, there is the, wow, lots of options there. 27.5. So Alaska would be tricky because I don't think you would have enough. Yeah, so it looks like 27.5 is about the lowest that you get. And again, this is, well, I haven't said this yet, but this is the one-way price that you would pay for one passenger, 27,500. We only have 60,000 Bilt points to work with, so that might not work for us. Let's switch this to Air France. So we're going to say North America to Europe. We got 100 entries per page. And one thing to note, this is only searching because again, this is just the free version. I have paid for this service for 1 month at least because I needed to set an alert for something, and you can only do that if you yeah, I'm pretty sure you can't set alerts until you pay for the service. But anyway, I normally do not pay for the services. So here we've got 25,000. So now we're looking at Air France, 25,000, 30,500 direct. I mean, most people would. I prefer direct flights. That's probably the most obvious thing I could say. So I'm not super interested in anything that's not direct. So here is an option, 25K, flying Air France, direct flight to Paris. Yeah, so I mean, 50K round trip would not be the worst thing in the world. There's an option, February 17th, Seattle to Paris, on any of these. I'll just have a stop, but there's the Air France. So, I'm actually curious then, because this looks like the saver level price, February 17th, Seattle to Paris. So I'm going to go ahead and log in if I'm not already. So I'll be right back. So here we are logged in, and this pop-up will not stop. Thank you. All right, so let's search for some reward seats. We're going to go Seattle, because I actually don't know what they charge in economy to fly Air France if you book it through Virgin Atlantic. So we're going to see. And one thing also that I haven't mentioned is I don't do any sort of like preparation as far as research and finding the flights beforehand. This is raw. This is like I have done no work beforehand to try to make this, turn out better than it just normally would in a normal search. So you are getting exactly what I would do, and you're watching me do it real time. Okay, so this is interesting. Here is this flight that we found. And I say we because this is obviously collective. You're doing this with me. February 17th, okay, Seattle to Paris. Now, this was found 8 hours ago, so this is all cached data. This has been cached. It is sitting here for you to use, but this is something that if we were interested in booking this with Air France, we're going to go to Air France's website and make sure that it's still available, because as of 8 hours ago, this website, seats.aero, they did find this flight, but there's no guarantee that it's still available. Anyway, they found it. It was $25,000 plus $103 available on Air France, but we can book that exact same flight. Let's make sure it's the exact same flight. So if we click here, it is 1340 to 815, 1340 to 815. This is the exact same flight for 15,000 Virgin Atlantic miles. Now, it's a little bit higher in taxes. Virgin Atlantic is just notorious for that, but for 15,000, did I say 13,000? 15,000 Virgin Atlantic miles and $160 in taxes. Not incredible. I don't love those taxes, but this is a nonstop flight from Seattle to Paris. Not to mention that, holy cow, 20,500 to fly in premium economy. There is a stop in London, so maybe you just want to go to London. Maybe you just get off the plane in London and don't get back on. But at any rate, 20,500 for premium, that is not bad at all. Here's a 13,000 plus $130 in taxes. That's a really good deal. Because again, this is West Coast, Seattle to London, and then from there, London to Paris. But 13,000 plus 130. Let's add this to our list because that's doable. If you can get that both ways, 60,000 Bilt points. I mean, it doesn't even have to be Bilt points at this point because Virgin Atlantic partners with every transferable currency. Let's throw that in. So Seattle, whoops, that's not the right one. Virgin Atlantic flying on Air France. This is Seattle to CDG. Go stop LHR. Dates 2/17. Cabin economy 13. Yeah, let's do that. 13,000. Fees $130. Duration also not bad. I mean, so there's one change, and we can look at. Oh, it looks like you fly Virgin Atlantic for. Here we go. Flight details. Fly Virgin to London, and then Air France for the connection. Nice. Well, if that's the case, then let me just do this. Let's go down to Virgin Atlantic here. Okay, so the duration of this flight is 13 hours, 40 minutes. And then we'll get to the cash price later. I don't super care about that right now. Here I want to put the nonstop option, 164, 0, or 9 hours 35. Because with our Bilt points, we could theoretically do this as long as we can find the way back for the same price. Or cheaper, maybe cheaper. So let's edit this. Actually, no, we're doing here. So let's go North America to Europe. Change this to Seattle. We're looking on Virgin. I want to look around that same date. So I see 15,000, 15,000, 15,000. I don't see any 13,000. Oh, 9,000. There we go. That's what I was hoping to find. So Virgin Atlantic, they went dynamic, which means they don't have an award chart or anything for their own flights. But they recently, I don't know, within the past 6 months, let's say, they recently changed stuff to where you can get flights for as low. I mean, I think I've seen them in economy as low as like 6,000. So if you want to go Seattle to London on that exact same date that we just looked at, so we're no longer looking at, come on, you just up. We're no longer looking at going Seattle, London, and then London to Paris. Now we're just going to go Seattle to London, and Seats.aero is saying that that flight on the 17th, there you are, on the 17th, as of 2 hours ago, is only 9,000 points. And there it is, saver level. So you can fly Seattle to London, $110 in taxes, 9,000. You can do premium economy for 16,500. That is a steal. And from what I've heard, I haven't flown Virgin Atlantic itself. I've booked Delta flights on Virgin Atlantic all the time. I do that a lot. But I have not flown Virgin Atlantic ever, but I have heard that their premium economy is actually really good. So for less than double the price in miles or points, it is more than double in taxes. So that's not great, but depending on your cash situation, that might be good. That might be preferable. But let's record that. So we're just going to change a few things here. This is flying Virgin Atlantic. This is to LHR. Whoops. Same day, 9,000 for 110 nonstop. That is a 9 hour and 30-minute flight. Great. That's a good deal. Again, we are looking, this flight would leave in about a month from today. So even if you're like, I want to take this kind of last minute thing. I mean, it's not last minute, but you're definitely not planning ahead. This is looking 1 month in the future to go to Europe. That is not a bad deal. I actually really like that. Okay. What else could we look at? So I stopped looking at Alaska pretty early on. But let's go back. Just wait for this to load here. So departing Seattle. So 22,500. Get to Keflavik. Oh, 27.5 direct. So 22,500 would be with a layover. Oh, interesting. Go down to Portland. So if you just take a layover in Portland, then you can get to Iceland for even cheaper than the direct flight. That's kind of silly. Okay, so here's what I was interested in seeing. 35K direct. Here you go. No, I want to see Frankfurt. No, let's do Dublin. So direct flight to Dublin is 27.5. Again, that's not bad. What if we went the other way? So we could get to Europe pretty easily. I mean, 9,000 miles would be pretty easy. Europe to North America. There we go. Just had to do a little refresh there. Oh, it's because I had Seattle still in the departure. Whoops. So let's go. So these are all Iceland. There's a London for 27.5. There's Dublin. There you go. So you could fly. And then, yeah, let's go to Alaska and check that out. But this is saying you could go. So 10 days later, which is, I believe that's exactly what I put. Yeah, 10 days. 10 days later, Seats.arrow is saying that there's a flight that they found a day ago. So February 27th, they found this flight one day ago, that Dublin to Seattle is 27.5. So, why I would be interested in that is because practically, you could very easily fly from London to Dublin on just a cash ticket, just pay $50 to fly Ryanair or something. And you could spend however much time you wanted to in London or Dublin, and then you could fly from Dublin to Seattle for 27,500 Alaska miles plus $53.93. Is that? Yeah, so that is a very low tax for this flight. Now, one of the reasons you would want to do this, and let's just look at, for example, so we were just looking at this one. Let's look at this guy, $450 in taxes and fees. So this 27,500 is flying on British Airways. It's departing from London, going straight direct to Seattle, but it charges $450 in taxes. That's because London has very high departure taxes. LHR specifically has very high, well, maybe London as a whole, but LHR is the biggest one. Very high departure taxes. And so if you want to leave Europe from London, if that's your originating city that you're leaving from, you're going to pay a lot in cash, a lot relatively. So this same 27,500, let's just go from Dublin instead, you pay $50. So you save $400 if you just catch a short flight from London to Dublin at some point in your trip. Spend maybe a few days in London, spend the whole time in London, doesn't matter. At some point, fly to Dublin in order to depart back to the US, back to Seattle. You will save $400 doing that. That is the difference. Hopefully that is sufficiently illustrated. So let's just let's make sure that flight is available. Dublin, Seattle. We want to go one way, and this is Feb 27. Use points. Go. And then, frankly, what am I doing? Not Air France. This is Alaska. I am pretty sure that we're going to find this flight, so I'm just going to start logging it while it is loading. 227, economy. Now again, I keep saying again, but it's not like I've necessarily said this. You have 60,000 Bilt points. This is assuming you have no other points. If you have no other points besides 60,000, you're going to be flying economy if you're trying to do two people all on points, right? So we're not really prioritizing premium economy, business class. We're not doing any of that. You just don't have enough points. It's a pipe dream to think, well, how can I fly in a lie flat seat to Europe with 60,000 points? Two people. You're just not going to find it. It's just not going to work. And there you go. So there's February 27th. There's that flight that we found, 4:30 p.m., 6:20. I mean, out of curiosity, yeah, that's the one, 4:30, 6:20, 9 hours, 50 minutes. Beautiful. 27,500. There's 4 seats available, $55 in taxes. And then here's the insane prices you would pay here. 70,000 in business, that's not bad. 55,000. Dublin to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Seattle. 55 is not bad. It says mixed itinerary though. So one of these is going to be in coach, I would guess. Is it going to show? I don't know. This is Dublin to Minneapolis to Seattle. 228.43. There, it's this flight here. Shoot, business. Oh, yes, there was. It showed it right there. I don't know how, because it said, didn't it say mixed itinerary? Go back. Change flight. So how do I see? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to see what part of the itinerary is going to be mixed. As in, you're flying economy for one. Oh, there it is. So you're flying business class Dublin to Minneapolis. That's the 8-hour leg, I believe. Yeah, 8.5 hours. And then from Minneapolis to Seattle, which is only 4 hours, that's the economy. You have a 13.5-hour layover in Minneapolis, which doesn't sound great to me, but it's only 55,000 points. That's not bad. So let's go ahead and flip back around. Find that first flight here, $27,500, $55. That is a nonstop flight, and it is 9 hours, 50 minutes. Cool. So here is the itinerary that would be pretty nice. Now, we do have a bit of a problem. 27,500 times 2 is 55. And then you've also got these 9,000 point flights. So if you add that up, that's 73. You only have 60 though. So how could we do this? It's 27.5. Let's see, that's flying Aer Lingus. Here's something. So Aer Lingus itself, you can book. Let's see, should we look on their website? It should be the same. So let's just go to British Airways. British Airways theoretically should be able to see this flight that Aer Lingus is making available to its partners. All right, so on British Airways, we are going to go and search for that flight that we found on Alaska. It is 27,500 on Alaska. Let's see if it is any cheaper if we book directly with Avios. You'll notice that even though we are wanting two passengers, I never search two passengers because frankly, there's either going to be two seats available or there won't be. And it will most of the time, it'll oftentimes very clearly say this is the last seat or one more seat available or something. But I never want the search to go off of the seats and throw a wrench into things. Okay, so interestingly, it does not see. Okay, that's the wrong day. I don't know why British Airways does that. I clicked February 27th. I am 99% sure that I clicked February 27th, but when it pulls up the results, it'll just push me back a day. I don't know why it does that, and then I have to click the day that I originally clicked. And here you go. There's our Dublin to Seattle. How much is it? It costs 19,250 plus more cash. So that is a higher cash price, but it is a cheaper, in fact, quite a bit cheaper points price. 189.83. So now I'm curious though, if you actually would be able to get a cheaper cash price, because British Airways is kind of notorious for charging a lot of taxes and fees. But let's just go ahead and record this flight, 19,250 plus 189.83. Because it's not horrible, because if you can recall, the departing from London tax was going to be $450, but because we're switching to Dublin, it drops to only 50 or 55. Let's do this. So British Airways, all this is the same because it's the same flight. Same. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and log in. Avios reward flights. This looks different than what I've previously seen. They might have updated their system, which would be incredible because it was so annoying. I have tried to search for reward flights with Aer Lingus before, and it was a nightmare. So I'm hoping that this is actually better. Okay, so 6+ seats available. That's great. 16,250. So it's even cheaper in Avios. And one thing to keep in mind, British Airways and Aer Lingus, they use the exact same point currency. You're just using a different website. It's a different interface. Aer Lingus, British Airways, Iberia, Finnair, they all use Avios. Avios is the point. That's the name of the point. So 16,250, same taxes and fees as British Airways, 189.83. So that didn't change, but we save, so 16,250. Hey, you save 3,000 miles per person. So I mean, could be worse. So this is through Aer Lingus. All right, we got to round this out though. We got to go to Iberia. All right, so I don't remember if I need to log in order, man, these cookies, reject. I don't remember if I need to log in order to see reward flights. So we're going to try it without being logged in. And if that doesn't work, then that's okay. We will log in. Nice. Okay. Is it going to search for anything? Try it the day after. It just keeps giving me an error. And I don't know why. Let's see. Dublin, Seattle, one way. Let's just pick a different date entirely. Yeah, okay. So this is not going to work. That's unfortunate. I'm pretty sure that last I checked, American Airlines, let's go the other way. American Airlines is not a partner with Aer Lingus. I'm pretty sure, but I wanted to check if they're able to see. No, it doesn't look like they do that. Dublin, Philadelphia, that's probably flying American. Yeah. These are all Dublin, Philadelphia. Wow. Okay. Well, that's what I thought. Well, we have solid options because if you take our 18,000 two-person trip to London with only $100 in fees per person, this is all per person. But you take that plus this, you're at 56.5, or if you take this plus this, 50,005 because it's 3K less per person. Yeah, so you could, with 60,000 Bilt points, you could get to London and back on a 10-day trip in economy, flying nonstop, for as low as, with what we found in this short time, 50,500 miles, or 50,500 Bilt points. This is assuming that there are no transfer bonuses too. So Bilt is actually one of the best currencies, one of the best. I mean, they're not a bank program, so let's call it a program. Bilt is one of the best programs for offering transfer bonuses, which would basically mean if you could get a transfer bonus from Virgin Atlantic, this 9,000 Bilt point requirement becomes fewer Bilt points to get to the same 9,000 Virgin Atlantic requirement. So, for example, let's just keep it simple. Let's even do a 20% transfer bonus and a 30%. So we will do this divided by 100 divided by 1.2. Oh, that's not what I want. I want the column to stay the same, but the row can change. All right. So what I've done is I've said if you could get for the required Virgin Atlantic miles that you would need, or Virgin Atlantic points that you would need, 18,000, if there was a 20% transfer bonus to Virgin Atlantic from this program, then you would only need to transfer 15,000 miles from this program in order to book this flight. If there were a 30% transfer bonus, I mean, 18,000 is pretty low. That's why the difference is negligible. It's only 1,000 points. But there's, a 3,000 point difference on this 55K option, although let's be honest, Alaska will never have a transfer bonus from Bilt. Well, actually, that's not true. When Alaska first joined, I believe they might have had a relatively small transfer bonus. That's because they historically have gone up to 100% transfer bonus, which is really good. At least I believe that's the highest. Maybe they've gone to 150. I've never really been able to take advantage of it because I don't have Bilt's elite status, and you probably don't either, so we're not going to worry about that. But 20 and 30 are the typical transfer bonuses that you will see from other programs. So anyway, 38,500 Avios requirement drops down to 33 or 30, depending on if it's 20 or 30%. 32.5 drops down to 28 or 25. So you could do it as low as Avios is not a hard currency to find a transfer bonus with at any given point during the year. So if you could snag a 30% transfer bonus to Avios, you could do it for as little as 25,000. That's for the two of you, one way. And then let's just say you couldn't get it for Virgin. So 25,000 plus 18, you just flew round trip to Europe, there and back, two people, 43,000 Bilt points. Let's say that you got that many Bilt points transferred to get you this many Avios plus this many Virgin Atlantic miles. So 25 plus the 18, that is only 43,000. You did have to pay $489, about $600. So that's not incredible. That's because both programs that we used charge higher taxes and fees. If you could fly Alaska, if you had enough to fly Alaska, let's say 55, 14, no, you'd still be shy. Less than 10, 9,000. So if you wanted to cut down the cost in cash, you could book this Alaska flight. Because remember, this is all the same flight. All three of these entries here, this is the exact same flight. You're booking one with Alaska or British or Aer Lingus. Alaska is the most expensive in points, but it's the cheapest in cash. That's their cash cost. And then just for comparison, we'll go to Google Flights. And let's look at this one-way flight from Dublin to Seattle, departing on February 27th. This one-way flight that we're talking about is $800 for one person. And here's a nice extension, a Google Chrome extension that I use. It's called Points Path. So it tells me right there, hey, this flight you're looking at for $800, you could book that same flight for 27,500 Alaska miles and $50. So that is pretty cool. Here is a Delta. Not that you have Delta miles, but just to illustrate. So let's see. If you had, say you had Chase points, you opened up a Chase credit card, or you opened up an American Express credit card, you were convinced that the American Express Gold card would be the best credit card you've ever had, or the Chase Sapphire Preferred would be this incredible opportunity, whatever. If you had points with any of those other currencies, any of those other programs, then you could also combine your Bilt points with those by transferring to the same program. So what that means is you would transfer, let's use this example, this 32,500 Avios is how many you would need for two people one way, plus 18,000 Virgin Atlantic miles. So in total, you need 50,500 points in miles. But if you have points in one of these other programs, then you could transfer some from the other program and then transfer the rest from Bilt, or vice versa. That way you are able to essentially combine your points with the different programs, with Bilt, Chase, American Express, Capital One, Citi. I knew there was one I was forgetting. So yeah, if you have points with any of those other ones, then with these programs specifically, not all of them, for example, Alaska only partners with Bilt. So if you wanted to book this flight specifically, you have to transfer your Bilt miles or get Alaska miles through some other means because they don't transfer from those other programs that I've mentioned. But that's how you can do it. Use transfer bonuses, use currencies from another program, or just bite the bullet and pay cash. So what this $800 cash price is not the greatest comparison, and that's because no one would pay that price. That's insane. $800 for a one-way ticket in economy. Well, I shouldn't say no one. I wouldn't pay that. That's really expensive. And that's because this is one way. When you search one way, airlines are going to charge you what is kind of a crazy price. And here's an example. It's $465 in the other direction. It's the exact same flight, but the other direction, it's only $400. So it's a little more than half. What we should do really is go round trip. So let's use our original dates, 17 to 27. So that flight, if you want it round trip, is, oh, I guess 17 wasn't doing that, but you could do this flight. This actually doesn't look too bad. Seattle to London, London to Dublin. That is only 480 round trip. So, I mean, I am hesitant to say that, to simplify this, just cut this price in half to 240 or $250. If you use one of these. That sounds way too cheap, I guess. So I wouldn't necessarily say just cut that price in half because that's a really low price. That's actually not a bad deal if you just wanted to get there in cash. 44,000 Delta miles. That's pretty cheap too. I'm curious what this is going to say if it's the 44,000 for these, because that's not a bad deal for your Delta miles. It's not great value considering it's a $500 flight. You have to spend 44,000 Delta miles. It's okay. It's not insane, not incredible, but that's not a bad use of your Delta miles. Anyway, that's off topic. That's more just interesting for me. But you could call this flight $250 cash. But if you were to actually book this flight, I mean, that's why it's inflated. $810 for this one-way flight. That's what it actually costs if you were to go to Aer Lingus' website to book it. That's what you would pay. But it's because you're only looking at the one-way price. If you go round trip, it gets much, much cheaper, which is very interesting. And then this flight, Seattle to London. I'm curious how much that guy is. Seattle to London on the 17th. So this is flying Virgin Atlantic, $375 for this one-way ticket. And look at that. You could book it with Delta for 42,000 miles and $5.60 or $6 rounded. You could fly Delta themselves, looks like. So that's flying on Delta in an A330 for $375. Fly on Virgin, $375. So yeah, there's lots of options. But $375 is the cash price here. So total that up, $1185 if you were to book those two one ways. So not a bad use. Actually, scratch that. I changed my mind. 110, so you're at 220 plus 380. Yeah, so $600, and you're having to spend 50,000 of your Bilt points to do it. So $600 plus 50,000 Bilt points. If it were me, I would not do that. Because you're spending, oh, you know what? This is times two. This is just one person. Let's get apples to apples. Like I said, I have not prepared any of this beforehand. I'm just going off of what I find. But if you were to do this all times two, you would spend $2,370 cash if you were to book these two one-way flights cash. We already decided that this price was way too high. You could probably do this. I think 600 would be a reasonable, estimate of the cost here. So you're at 1350. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily book this flight, 32.5 plus this, 50,500 of your Bilt or any other mile because all of them transfer to Avios and Virgin Atlantic. I don't know if I would do that while also spending $600 in cash for the taxes and fees. So given that, I would probably keep looking. I'm not going to do that in this video, but that's just to show you what the options are, give a little bit of an explanation for it. Let me know if you have any questions, and also if you watch this video all the way to the end, thank you. Also put in the comments if you have somewhere that you want to go, give me the details. Give me the parameters that I've got here or any other information that I would need. Tell me what points you have, how flexible you are, and I'd be happy to put it in a video. That's actually what I would like to do. These are fake. I don't have any person in mind that I'm trying to build a trip for with these parameters. But I would love to do it for real for someone who actually is trying to do something. That would actually be far more beneficial. So let me know in the comments if you have any sample itineraries that I can try and build. Thanks.